This story is said to have taken place in the 1950s in a small town in England, and it's still whispered about to this day. The main characters were a young couple named Susan and David. They had moved into an isolated house just outside of town, seeking peace and quiet, but that decision would change their lives forever. Shortly after they moved in, strange things began happening. Susan often mentioned feeling like something was moving around the house at night. Most of the time, they dismissed it as wind or imagination. That one night, everything changed. Susan suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. She thought she heard someone walking through the house, footsteps so light they were almost like whispers, but she was certain they were there. She glanced at David, who was still sound asleep. Feeling that something was off, Susan grabbed her flashlight and quietly descended the stairs. The house was dark, but it had never felt this silent before. As she reached the kitchen window, she glanced outside, and her heart froze. In the darkness, there was a pale figure staring right back at her. Its eyes were hollow, empty, as if devoid of life. Susan felt a cold wave of fear wash over her. The figure didn't move, it simply stood there, watching her. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered and went out, and just as quickly the figure disappeared. Panicked, Susan woke David, but he told her there was no one outside. Despite his reassurances, Susan was sure what she saw was real. The next night, both Susan and David woke up again, but this time the noises were closer. It felt as if something was moving inside the house, yet there was no one to be found. As Susan wondered if she had seen the figure again, that night became a story the town would never forget. That house still stands on the outskirts of town, and no one dares to move in. Rumor has it that if you approach the house at midnight, you might still see that shadow watching from the window, just like the night Susan and David disappeared.